Well, it's been quite a year on the Isle of Man in all senses, especially for the business community. With me is Greg Jones from KPMG. Greg, I just thought it'd be worth kind of looking back on what we have had, how you think it's affecting us, and a bit of crystal ball gazing. Pretty tricky year?
It's been a tricky year, Paul, but as long as I've been operating offshore, there have been things that have been sent to try us, and this year's been no exception. We've had all the initiatives, international initiatives surrounding transparency, FATCA, we've got disclosure requirements, we've got the tightening of anti-avoidance rules in our normal marketplaces such as the UK. We've had the introduction of a general anti-abuse rule earlier in the year, which is intended to weed out egregious tax planning arrangements, but I think, and a lot of commentators think, is actually going to stop what you and I might regard as mainstream tax planning arrangements. So there's been a lot sent to try us, but we've battled through, we're still there, and let's not forget these things are not aimed at the Isle of Man specifically. They're aimed at ensuring that UK and other nations' taxpayers remain compliant, because at the back end of a recession most countries are still struggling for tax revenues, for cash receipts generally, and they see tax revenues as an obvious place where funds aren't coming through. And to name one specific example of that, and I'll come back to the Manx disclosure facility in a minute. If you look at the arrangement that the UK has come to with Switzerland, the Swiss agreement, this was intended to weed out non-compliant UK taxpayers who had funds salted away in Switzerland. And the choice was either come clean, make a clean breast of it, tell us all about yourself, or there'll be a 35% withholding taken off, not just the revenue stream from the account locked away in Switzerland, but the actual cash balance held in the account. The thinking being it's built up over many, many years and no tax is being paid on it. Well, the Exchequer was banking on getting 5 million from that particular facility because of the untold, 5 billion should I say, untold billions of tax revenues they thought were being salted away. And so far less than 1 billion has been recovered. Now, we see that as a sort of, as a thank you to Isle of Man, Jersey and Guernsey for entering into the FATCA initiative, which perhaps we'll return to in a minute. Isle of Man, Jersey and Guernsey have also been given these disclosure facilities whereby anyone with an account in Isle of Man, Jersey or Guernsey on which tax hasn't been paid can now own up and pay the tax and have a very limited penalty. Well, it would be nice to think that the Treasury's projections would fall short equally in respect to the Isle of Man, Jersey and Guernsey facilities, just as they have done with Switzerland. I'm particularly interested, obviously, in the Isle of Man one. It would be nice to think there were untold billions stashed away in Jersey and Guernsey, but not so much in the Isle of Man, because I think it's fairly, it's true to say that we have observed a very compliant regime in recent years, and I just don't think the untold billions are there in the way that the UK Exchequer thinks they are. So returning to your question, that sort of thing has been sent to try us. It's not targeted specifically at the Isle of Man, it's targeted at taxpayers in general. And the thinking was that over the years it's been the offshore centres who benefited from specifically UK taxpayers' lack of compliance. And maybe once upon a time that was the case, but I think that in recent years that hasn't been the case, and I think that's been shown to be the case. And if you were to ask me for highlights of the year, because I know we'll get onto that in a minute, I think there can only be one winner, can't there? And that happened in September when UK Prime Minister David Cameron stood up in the Commons and said, I do not regard the Crown dependencies and the offshore territories as being tax havens. They're basically the good guys. They've done what's needed to be done to tighten up their act, and we're now going to concentrate on those jurisdictions that we know are tax havens. So he didn't name names specifically, but it was nice to get that glowing reference from the British Prime Minister.
Been such a seismic change, though, hasn't it, over the years? I mean, the offshores were deemed to be places that could do certain other sorts of business, and obviously channel stuff back into the UK. Transparency, morality, these are two sort of big words that have been bandied around this year.
Yeah, and I just wonder again whether it's perhaps too early to say, but whether we've turned the corner slightly, maybe in the court of public opinion. It is a dangerous thing to say, and obviously I can't speak for Mr. Murphy, but if you think about those that have been labelled and associated with the label of tax dodger this year in particular, it's been the multinationals who've been able to structure their international operations, and specifically those in the UK, through fairly labyrinthian, time-honoured and in my view perfectly respectable tax planning structures. But they're the ones who've been labelled as tax dodgers because the revenues they've been generating in the United Kingdom haven't been matched by the taxes they've been paying. And so to an extent that's almost taken the heat off the offshore centres who, for various reasons, as I said before, I think we are now generally compliant to an extent that a lot of onshore centres definitely aren't.
Well, it was tax avoidance and evasion, of course, are two different things. Now it's almost both are seen as no-nos.
Well, when you introduce the moral angle to the equation, the scientific distinction, if there was one, between avoidance and evasion goes out the window. There are those people who've come up with a new term, avoision, or is it evasion? So I'm not really quite sure. And it's probably true to say that the distinction that was once there, well, I won't say it's not there anymore, but the lines may be moved a bit closer towards avoidance than it was previously. But don't forget, I say, with the general anti-abuse rule, and we're talking specifically about the UK market, although lots of other countries have a general anti-abuse rule, that should in itself weed out the types of avoidance that the tax authorities, and hopefully therefore society, regards as acceptable from those which are not acceptable. Too early to say how that's going to operate, but it's to be hoped that if the guidance notes that the tax authorities have produced are to be relied on, then there are still lots of straightforward mainstream planning arrangements that will be regarded as perfectly acceptable, and they can easily be distinguished in most cases from those that aren't.
Okay. Isle of Man PLC, looking ahead, have we still got a role in this financial world, the new financial world?
We certainly do, because what do we do at the end of the day? And I'm talking specifically about the finance sector and the economy that's outward looking, that deals commercially with the rest of the world. What do? Is we help people manage their wealth, and we do that in a variety of means and through a variety of measures. We do it through our banking sector, we do it through our funds, our investment management sector, our insurance companies, our lawyers, our accountants, and our tax planners. And we do it very well, I think. And although we've got all those things sent to trials that I referred to earlier, transparency regimes, well, we have nothing to fear from those as long as what we're supplying is respectable, and it is. FATCA, which I said to come back to, and I haven't yet, anti-avoidance rules, etc., etc. We've got a lot to offer, and it isn't a shrinking marketplace. We deal with wealthy people with successful businesses, and there are new successful businesses. Somebody's creating his fortune every day, and we simply are looking for the opportunity for the Isle of Man to play a role in helping him or that business to manage that fortune in a way which is going to present him with enduring wealth, and maybe, yes, do it in a tax efficient manner. So yes, I think we've got a lot to offer. We're not onto the predictions bit yet, but
no. Well, we could talk about it all day, but I'm just moving along. The FATCA thing, it was a bombshell when it first came up. In fact, I think someone from your company was the first one that threw it towards me, saying this looks like it's going to be pretty big if it's pushed any further than just the UK and America, which it's happened. There was a lot of people thinking, can this really be true? Yeah. Can we work in that new way? Yeah. But it's happening.
It is happening, and let's not lose sight of the fact that FATCA isn't about imposing tax that wouldn't otherwise exist. FATCA is about making information available, and if we simply take the view that FATCA is one of a number of measures that's going to come in over the next few years, that's going to make information more freely available to the right people than it was previously, We've just got to regard FATCA as standing alongside those other measures, such as the fact that the G5 nations are now entering into this pilot arrangement, and the Isle of Man is going to join them, as indeed some of the other crown dependencies and offshore territories. And so it's not just the US and of course the UK that will be supplying information to, it's other countries as well. And I've often joked about the fact that eventually everyone will be supplying information to everybody else, and then where will that leave us? Where will it leave us? Where will it leave our competitors? I don't think we can, and in fact, we long ago ceased to rely on the fact that the assistance we give to people and to businesses and the planning that we do for them didn't need to be disclosed. That was always the icing on the cake. Now things do need to be disclosed, and they have to stand up to scrutiny. And that's where those of us who work within the finance sector have to make sure that our clients and our practices are fully compliant.
Would it be fair to say you've actually going to do quite well out of this, because there's going to be more paperwork, more bookable hours, billable hours?
Very possibly. We're not the only ones in this market, of course, but the thing about compliance regimes, it does increase the cost of doing business. It increases the cost of making and preserving wealth, and those that help you make wealth or preserve it would obviously hope to share in that. But it has to be said, I think, that professionals don't, I think maybe we'd rather do without FATCA, we'd rather do without all these transparency initiatives, because we can see what a drain they are on business. They do present an increasing cost to businesses of staying in the market that they're in. And it's our role to help people and to help businesses to cope with them.
Okay. Finally, the Scottish question. Independence, what would that mean for the Isle of Man? Because it's I know we got all pally with Scotland recently, and the airports will be being used again, and the airlines serving between the two countries. But have you got any worries that they could undercut the Isle of Man doing what we do now?
None whatsoever.
Because they won't get independence? You don't think it's going to happen?
Listen, first of all, it's anything from being a foregone conclusion that the Scottish people will vote for independence, and I won't have a vote in that, and I'm quite open-minded as to what the result is. But secondly, I think that whichever way it goes, there'll be far more weighty matters on their minds. If the vote is for independence, then that's a brand new start, isn't it? A brand new beginning. There'll be lots of things to think about. There'll be lots of opportunities to exploit. I'm just not convinced that competing with the likes of the Isle of Man is necessarily going to be high up on their list.
Okay. And how would you mark our leaders this year out of 10? They hate me doing that, by the way, when I ask them themselves. But could you do a report card? How do you think the Isle of Man has dealt with all these challenges?
I think they've done pretty well, actually. Bear in mind, it's a big world out there, and a lot of pressure has been put on us. We're not in it alone, as I said. We've got, fortunately, the Channel Islands, and we've been standing shoulder to shoulder with the Channel Islands. A lot of overseas territories as well have been pretty much put in the same boat. And when you take into account the resources that a small place like the Isle of Man can afford to devote to coping with these challenges, I think the government's done pretty well. If you ask me to put a mark on it, a number, 7.5.